Police encounters with the mentally ill can often turn deadly, but there's training that can literally save lives.
And the belief is it could also change the way police interact with the rest of us.
Tom Lydon of the Fox 9 Investigators is here to tell us about it. So, Tom, how new is this kind of training?
You know, it's been around for a couple of decades, but it's really being embraced like never before. There's some people out there who believe this could be the biggest change to police training that we've seen in about 40 years, so it's something. Think for just a moment about some of our recent police shootings. Jamar Clark, from start to finish, 61 seconds before he was killed by police. Philando Castile, just about 40 seconds. Crisis Intervention Team Training, or CIT, teaches officers to slow things down, how to de-escalate a situation. Tonight, a front row seat to how it works. It's the kind of video that doesn't make the nightly news, but maybe it should. A naked man in the middle of Maryland Avenue last March, pounding on a police squad car, asking officers to shoot him. You could count the ways this encounter could go terribly wrong, but at every step, it goes right. The officers wait for backup, calmly contain the suspect, convince him they're not going to hurt him until they're close enough to use a taser. A classic case of de-escalation.
You could talk to any cop anywhere in the country, and they're going to tell you that probably some of the worst encounters they've had was with naked people that are really deep in crisis.
Robert Wood was naked too, barricaded in his home when he shot a St. Paul police officer in the face with an air rifle. His girlfriend told police he wanted to die and wanted police to pull the trigger.
Don't shoot him, that's what he wants.
That situation will forever stay with me.
Officer Jamie Sipes was the crisis negotiator. After 2 hours, he convinced Wood to give up.
That started as a welfare check, and he truly wanted help.
We're on our way right now to a possible CIT call. It's a woman who called police, said her boyfriend doesn't sound right, he seems despondent, maybe on drugs, and she's worried he could be a possible suicide risk.
Have you hurt yourself? Okay, are you planning on hurting yourself?
This man tells police he's back using heroin again, but instead of handcuffs, Officer Sipes offers an empathetic ear.
I don't have contact with substance abuse, but I do have contact with alcoholism.
It's estimated that 1 in 10 police calls now involve someone in a mental health crisis. In Minneapolis, more than 8,000 calls in the last couple of years for the emotionally disturbed. More than 5,000 of those calls in St. Paul, where the bridge jumpers have become an almost weekly appointment. Most of them calmly talk down. And according to one study, half of all people shot and killed by police in the U.S. are mentally ill.
Philip got shot when he was right here, like right when he hit the sidewalk.
People like Philip Quinn, schizophrenic and just released from a psych unit, he'd already stabbed himself in the throat and chest when his girlfriend called 911 for the second time that day.
I was asking him, why the guns? Like, what the hell are you guys doing? You know what I mean? And it happened so quick, I can't even begin to explain it to you.
Quinn ran as soon as he saw police. The officer said he was cornered with no choice but to shoot to kill. A grand jury agreed.
He was so quick to take a shot. They had no conversation with Philip. There was no trying to reason with him or nothing.
These interactions are really defined by the first couple seconds, aren't they?
Yes, every situation is the first couple seconds. And it's, you know, anything can happen in that first 30 seconds to a minute.
Deputy Chief Mary Nash says for officers dealing with the mentally ill, time becomes the enemy. Seconds spiral, options close until the worst case scenario almost seems inevitable.
Engaging with people in crisis is about slowing it down, listening, communicating, understanding what's going on, coming to a resolution, and we know that the yelling and screaming doesn't get us anywhere.
Police are generally taught to come in big to a situation and to take control quickly. Doesn't usually work if someone's having a mental health crisis. You can't convince someone that they're not having their delusions or hearing voices. There's no way that you can do that. So you have to work with them and partner with them to get the situation resolved.
The average police officer in America receives 58 hours of firearms training, 49 hours of defensive tactical training. But if they're lucky, only 8 hours of de-escalation training. But in Minnesota, that's changing.
I ain't doing anything. He's here spying on me. He's out here, they're all spying on me. You hear me?
St. Paul and Minneapolis police officers are now getting 40 hours of crisis intervention training, or CIT,
I see you have a knife. Can you tell me what's going on today?
where trained actors
What did I do?
play the role of someone who's mentally ill or on drugs.
What brought you here today?
Well, I'm just driving. I've just been driving, just driving.
The officers learn to approach slowly, introduce themselves, make eye contact.
Do you take any medication, Susie?
They're taught to ask open-ended questions and paraphrase what the person is saying to show they're listening.
And I don't want to make anything worse.
You're not making anything worse, and you're not a failure. We all have problems.
The officer is also buying time while keeping a safe distance and containing the suspect.
Kirk, you're not under arrest. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong to that guy.
I can imagine that's very painful. I've lost somebody recently.
Empathy is really the key.
Absolutely it is.
Mike Peterson is a former Burnsville cop and a trained therapist who says some officers come in skeptics, thinking they'll have to give up a tactical advantage, but they leave true believers.
I've had officers that have said this has saved my career.
Sounds like you're making some really good decisions.
The belief is crisis intervention training will also save lives, keeping calls like this one from escalating. The man appears stable, but he has an unusual request, one you won't find in any training manual. He wants someone to pray with.
So I'm going to ask the camera to shut off for a minute. Heavenly Father, I pray that you watch over today. He's going through a tough time. But in this case, he just simply wanted to talk a little bit.
And he wanted to pray with you.
And he wanted to pray.
How unusual is that?
It's happened before. I won't say it happens every week, but anytime somebody wants to pray, I'm happy to do that with them.
That's not in the job description, though, is it?
It's not. It's not on the tool belt, but it's something we can do.
All Minneapolis and St. Paul police officers will receive the full 40 hours of CIT training by next year, and they're not the only ones. Hennepin County is using this training for its jail staff and deputies. The Department of Corrections is using it for prison staff, and it's expected there will be some kind of legislation introduced at the Capitol requiring this training statewide. How many hours, guys, we'll have to see. But I also want to mention one final thing, and that is everyone associated with this agrees in some cases this will not work. In some cases, the person who's mentally ill will force the hand of the police officer, and they will likely have to shoot.
But what about the likelihood of them, we were talking this earlier today, getting that 40 hours of training they needed? I mean, you look at a Philando Castile case here with Officer Yanez. How many hours of this training did somebody like him have?
We were curious about him specifically. He only had 2 hours of training. That's according to the records that were released in that case, just 2 hours.
And there must be extra cost in this, but how much?
It depends, between $500 and $700 per officers, but the cost savings in terms of mentally ill not going to jail, in many cases it reduces that by 60%. Also disability, workman's comp for police officers, it all goes down. People believe that this is actually a cost savings when you look at the bigger picture.
Sounds
Your
like it.
story offers so much perspective, too, to see them out in the field working like that, praying, you know?
Yeah, something that's not in the tool belt, as he
Right.
said, but it's extraordinary. It's what that person needed at that time.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.